Hi guys, in this video we'll be looking at the various important features and points which you need to mention while presenting a case of inguinal hernia. So for UGs, the most important inguinal hernias which will be tested extensively are your direct inguinal hernia and your indirect inguinal hernia. So this case is an example of an indirect inguinal hernia. So I'll tell you all the important points which you need to mention for this. So before that, a little bit about the anatomy of the inguinal region. So inguinal region or groin is a junction of the anterior abdominal wall and anterior aspect of thigh. So basically you have a person like this. So this will be their anterior superior iliac spine, this will be the pubic symphysis. So this whole region will be their groin. Okay, so the inguinal ligament will be the midpoint of the groin. So those are some things which you need to remember. Important landmarks would be your anterior superior iliac spine, your pubic tubercle over here, and your pubic symphysis over here. Okay, so the pathways of entry and exit are potential sites of herniation naturally in every person. It's more common in males than in females. So the inguinal ligament, so this is the inguinal ligament, and the medial part it continues something known as lacunar ligament. So that is another important thing. It extends from the anterior superior iliac spine till the pubic tubercle. So that is the inguinal ligament. So the inguinal canal is basically a oblique intermuscular passage. It has two openings, the deep ring and the superficial ring. So the deep ring is a defect in the fascia transversalis. A superficial ring is a defect in the external oblique aponeurosis. So it's oblique in nature, so it's downward, forward and medially placed. So this is the diagram for the inguinal canal, and you see this epigastric artery over here. So you have something known as the Hasselbalch's triangle. So what the Hasselbalch triangle is, you have your rectus abdominis muscle over here. Let me change the color. So you have the rectus abdominis muscle over here, the inguinal ligament over here, and the epigastric vessels over here. So this triangle is known as Hasselbalch's triangle. Okay. So we'll move on to the case scenario. So as usual, you start off with the personal details of the patient, the name, age, residence, occupation, socio-economic class, the basic things, and then chief complaint. So the patient can come to the OPD with either complaint of swelling or swelling with pain. So these are the most common the chief complaints for case of inguinal hernia. So this is how it will look. So history of presenting illness, the swelling will be progressive in nature. So it gradually increased in size and attained the present size. And then the most important thing is it is reducible, which means it appears and increases in size on lifting weights and disappears on lying. So it's not always present. It is present only when there is strain or increased abdominal pressure, something like that. There's going to be herniation of the contents, and on resting is going to go back inside. So that property is known as reducibility, which is very important in case of any hernia. Okay. So if it is, there are hernias which can be irreducible, but those are complicated cases of hernia. A classical non-complicated case of hernia will usually be reducible. Okay, so this hernia might, this swelling can be associated with pain. So pain can be of two types, dull type or sharp colicky type. The dull type of pain occurs when the omentum the bowel drags the omentum or the mesentery along with it. So that's going to cause your dull dragging type of pain. And if there's any obstruction in the bowel or something like that, you're going to have a sharp colicky type of pain. So again, this pain is going to be more on since this is a dull aching type of pain, this is mostly due to the dragging of the mesentery. So it's precipitated on doing work and relieved on taking rest. So not radiating, this radiation of pain occurs in a special type of hernia known as obturator hernia. So that's an extra point which you need to know. Then moving on, in this the next set of questions we are trying to establish the cause of this hernia. So history of weight lifting is present. So that's the most common cause of hernia or indirect hernia. And then there's no history of trauma, so trauma can also be a cause of hernia. And then no history of chronic cough, so any lung disease which constantly increases the abdominal pressure can also be a cause of hernia. And then no history of constipation, so there's no obstruction in this case, so he's able to pass flatus in fetus properly, and there's no um, problem with the GI system. So no history of increased frequency, urgency or difficulty in micturition. So BPH, benign prostatic hyperplasia, the patient is an old male patient, so this is something which we need to keep in our mind. So we need to rule out BPH. BPH is also precipitating factor for hernia. So the most classical symptom which they expect you to ask for is nocturia. So nocturia is basically when a person wakes up to pass urine at night. Anything more than 2 times, you wake up more than 2 times at night while sleeping to pass urine, then you can suspect BPH. And then no history of abdominal distension. Again, if there's any obstruction, that means collection of all that digested food in the intestine leading to abdominal distension or some abdominal distension. So no history of vomiting, colicky, abdominal pain implies there's no obstruction of food. So obstruction of the bowel. So these are all the important things which you need to know in the history of presenting illness. So first of all, uh, to classically present it as a hernia case, you need to tell that it appears on work and then disappears on lying down. So reducibility is something which you need to mention for sure. And then the pain, the type of pain and the cause of hernia. These are all established in the history of presenting illness. Moving on to past history. So no history of similar complaints in the past. In case it's a case of recurrent hernia, then this history becomes important. Then diabetic, hypertensive, TB, asthma, epilepsy, all these are general surgery purpose we ask these questions. And then no history of previous surgery or hospitalization. There are few surgeries which you need to know in case of hernia. For example, in case of appendicectomy, there might be possible damage to ilioinguinal nerve, which will again cause a hernia. So that is the ilioinguinal nerve is the motor supply to the conjoint tendon or the transverse abdominis and the internal oblique. So if that is cut, then these two muscles are weakened and you can have a hernia, indirect hernia. So that's something which you need to know. Then personal history, a patient is on mixed diet, consumes alcohol, and then patient has quit smoking. So smoking is another important risk factor for developing hernia, because smoking decreases the collagen elastin ratio by decreasing the elastin, thereby decreasing the elastic property of the abdominal wall, thereby increasing the risk of developing hernia. So and then bowel and bladder habits are normal. So family history, the family history which you need to be aware for hernia would be your collagen disorders, like common ones like Marfan and Ehlers-Danlos. And if they ask you for something else, then you can tell prune belly syndrome, which is a collagen type 3 defect. So that is your family history. So from the following history of swelling, dull aching type of pain, reducible in nature, and then the cause of hernia is mostly weightlifting, and then no other important family history or past history. So we come to the provisional probable diagnosis of inguinal hernia. We will proceed with the case. So we'll go for the general examination, nothing very specific in this. Again, vitals, before we proceed to any local examination, we have to check all of this. So local examination, before local examination, we should get proper consent and give the patient adequate privacy, because we will be exposing his private parts. So we have to expose from the symphysis sternum to the mid-thigh. And so on local examination, this will be fine. Inspection, you need to tell this swelling, single in nature, which side it is and in which region it is, and then size, so 15 cross 8 centimeters in this case, and then shape, it can be pyriform or globular. So pyriform is in case of indirect hernia, it will be like this. So this is what pyriform is, and then globular will be like this. So these are the two types of shapes. So pyriform in indirect and globular or hemispherical in direct hernia. And the extent of the swelling, so this extends from the anterior superior iliac spine till just above the root of the scrotum. So what this establishes is the type of indirect hernia. It can be a complete or incomplete. So complete is the hernia, the bowel contents pass through the deep ring, superficial ring, and reach the base of the scrotum. So that is a complete indirect hernia. So incomplete indirect hernias are again of two types: bubonocele and funicular. So bubonocele is it's reaching, it's passing through the deep inguinal ring, but not through the superficial inguinal ring. So funicular is it passes through the superficial ring, but doesn't reach the base of the scrotum. So that is something which you need to know. So this is a case of funicular incomplete indirect hernia. So again, with any swelling, as you say, surface is smooth, well-defined margins, skin over swelling is normal, cough impulse is present, no visible peristalsis, no scarce sinuses or dilated veins. These are the classic findings of all the which you need to tell for any swelling. So the site, shape, extent, then skin over swelling, a surface, margin, skin or swelling, then peristalsis, scar, sinus, dilated veins. So other than that, you say this cough impulse is present. So in case of hernia, hernia, when you cough, there will be movement in the bowels, movement in the thing, uh, which will be felt on, which you can see. So you can say that it's a hernia based on that. So that is a special point which you need to mention for hernia. And then to determine the extent of hernia, you say penis is in midline, urethral meatus normal, scrotum appears normal, tone of abdominal muscles are normal. So in case of a complete indirect hernia, there might be deviation of the penis to the opposite side, and then urethral meatus may be blocked, then scrotum may be covered, may not be palpable. So all of these will give us a confusion of whether it is a inguinal, that is it's a hernia or a hydrocele. So to differentiate between that, we will do something in palpation. So with palpation, we have not warm not under. Before we start palpation, you need to do this check, and then inspectory findings are confirmed. And then again, the single swelling of size 15 cross 8 centimeter, right groin, pyriform in shape, extending from anterosuperior spine and lower border just above the root of scrotum. So you need to mention this thing called cannot get above swelling in case of a complete indirect hernia. So in case of a hydrocele, you will be able to get over swelling. In case of a hernia, you won't be able to get over swelling. So that's a differentiating point between hydrocele and hernia. So again, surface is smooth, skin over swelling is normal. So next part we'll be trying to find out what is the content of this hernial sac. So it's soft and elastic in consistency, suggesting of bowel. Again, expansile cough impulse is present. Again, bowel. Swelling is reducible manually with initial difficulty and reduced gurgling. So all of this suggests towards the presence of bowel as the hernial sac content. In case of mesentery or omentum, what you will have is you will have doughy inconsistency, expansile cough will be present, and swelling is reducible manually with initial ease and later difficulty. So these are the variations for omentum when you have omentum instead of bowel. So that's something which you need to take note of. Then urethral meatus is normal, no strictures, both testes are palpable. These are a normal examination of the groin. So that completes the examination of the groin. And then you do specific tests for hernia. The most important test which you need to do is the deep ring occlusion test, where you'll be closing the deep ring. So the deep ring is present on the mid-inguinal point, half an inch upper the inguinal ligament. So that is where it is present. You put your thumb over there, and first you reduce the swelling, you make the patient lie down, reduce the swelling, then you put your thumb, make him stand up and tell him to cough. If you are able to if the swelling comes back on coughing, then it's a case of direct hernia. If it doesn't appear, then it's a case of indirect hernia. This test helps us differentiate between direct and indirect hernia. So in some cases this might become false positive. So in fat people where the opening or the deep ring itself is very big, how much of pressure you give, it won't be fully occluded. So in those cases it's a false positive. So other two tests which you need to do are your ring invagination test and Zeeman's test. So these are accessory tests which will help you differentiate between the different types of hernia, either femoral, indirect or direct. So you do these tests, and finally percussion resonant note is heard over swelling, again suggesting of bowel as its contents. Then auscultation, normal bowel sounds are heard, again suggesting bowel as its contents. So other examination. So we were examining the right side of the groin, so we need to mention about the left side. So left inguinal scrotal region is normal. Examination of regional lymph nodes, it's generally you do it in case it's enlarged in case of malignancies or any chronic infections. And then examination of testis, scrotum, penis normal. Per rectal examination again for that BPH, it's has to be done by protocol, but it's not done. So and then moving on to other system examination. So RS, normal vesicular breath sounds are heard, no added sounds. CVS S1 S2 heard, no murmurs. Abdomen, you check for any other kind of problems in abdomen like divarication of recti and Margagni bulge. Margagni bulge is present as a precursor to direct inguinal hernia, where on straining you have two bulges bilaterally present in the groin region. So that is the Margagni bulge. In this case it's not there. Then abdominal muscle tone is checked and other hernial orifices are free. Superrectal examination not done, and CNS no focal neurological deficit. So based on all the inspection, palpation, auscultation, percussion, all of that, we come to a diagnosis of right-sided reducible indirect incomplete inguinal hernia with bowel as content without any complication. So to be a little more specific, it is a funicular type of incomplete inguinal hernia. So when you're telling the diagnosis, there are 7 things which you need to say in case of an inguinal hernia case. So side, in any hernia case you suppose to say this: the side, is it reducible or not? Is it direct or indirect? Is it complete or incomplete? Which region it is? What are its contents? And is it complicated or not by any strangulation, obstruction or inflammation, something like that. So you have a European Hernia Society classification, which so the P stands for primary or the first time occurrence, and secondary will be a recurrent hernia. L means lateral, and then 2 is the level at which this is present. So that is a classification of this. You can go have a look. There are other classifications of hernia as well, like Gilbert classification and all. So you can have a look at those. And then these are the various differential diagnoses. If they ask you, okay, what are the differential diagnoses for inguinal hernia, then you can say a femoral hernia, a vaginal hydrocele, and then retractile testis, Safina varix, funiculitis, inguinal lymphadenitis, lipoma of Cole. All these are differential diagnoses, and you need to know a little bit more about them. Then investigation. So usual investigations which we do, just this last one point which we need to mention are the post-voidal urine volume. So you need to mention that if it's more than 5 ml, then you need to suspect BPH. So BPH is again a precipitating factor for hernia occurrence. So moving on, treatment. The gold standard treatment is usually hernioplasty, and the method by which we do is Lichtenstein's tension-free open mesh repair. Other types of hernia surgery would be your herniatomy, which is done only in congenital cases of congenital hernia and hydrocele. So it's done in very specific cases, not commonly done herniatomy. So then herniorrhaphy is done, was previously done. So there are various methods of herniorrhaphy like Bessini, Scholdi's and all those things. And then your gold standard is your hernioplasty, which is your Lichtenstein's tension-free hernioplasty. And now newer methods are your laparoscopic hernial methods. We have 2 types. So transabdominal periperitoneal or TAPP method, or total extraperitoneal repair. So these 2 methods are the upcoming, and they're probably going to become the gold standard in a couple of years. So other than this, there's something called Truss hernia belt. So For patients for whom you can't operate, or you can't like they don't want operation but still want to manage this hernia, they can wear this truss belt, so it'll help them manage hernia. So what we missed out is the steps of hernia surgery, so I'll put that in another video. I hope this video is really helpful for all you people who are preparing for your case presentation. uh, Please do like, share, subscribe, comment if you find something wrong in this video or you have something to add on. And please do share this with your friends, they might find it useful while they are presenting their case. Thank you.